Hello, dear friends. Greetings from sunny Dubai. We are happy to welcome you back on Alatra TV Middle East. And today's live conversation I will host together with Sarah. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you so much. And today we have a very special guest invited by Sarah, Elliot from Australia, which proves the success of the theory of six handshakes that will be presented by Sarah later on. Hi, Elliot, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Hello, Elliot. Hi, Alina. On the platform of International Public Movement Alatra, we continue successfully testing the theory of six handshakes, which states that people on Earth are connected to each other through six connections. Within the framework of the project Creative Society, people from more than 180 countries conduct social surveys to find out how people envision society where they will be happy and living prosperously.
Yes, true, absolutely. And just before we start, I'd like to address our dear viewers. Please feel free to join our live conversation by leaving your comments below our video in YouTube, and please share it and invite your friends to take part in our live conversations. Also, the most interesting questions of today we'll ask our guest at the end of our live broadcast. And let's go then.
Our today's special guest is Elliot Connor, a CEO and founder of Human Nature Project, a conservationist and a person with a wide experience in volunteering. Hello, Elliot.
Hi there. Thank you for organizing the show. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you. It's our pleasure as well to welcome you today. And we want to know more about you. Tell us a bit about your passions and your aspirations.
Sure. So, I'm British by birth. So I grew up in a family of amateur bird watchers. And in the time since I've moved to Australia, I've been living here for the past 12 odd years of my life. And 12 months ago, I started Human Nature Projects, which is an international environmental NGO, which supports volunteers across 104 countries. So it's been an amazing journey for me, starting this conservation community and being able to connect with people all across the globe to support them in creating the change they want to see in the world. Yeah, I guess I'd call myself a community builder, change maker, conservationist, but trying to spread my impact across all sorts of activities to improve our global ecosystems and, of course, through my own charity.
Thank you so much. Really very interesting, Elliot. And what did you learn from your volunteering experience? And maybe you would like to share something with our audience.
Yeah, certainly. So, I've volunteered across 24 environmental NGOs, 24 organizations ongoing. But what I find really important, especially in the environmental space, is having all these diverse opinions. So, especially in nature protection, in the work I do, we have so many passionate people involved, so many amazing volunteers. So what I've learned certainly is just being able to be involved in so many different communities and the power of these collectives to create this amazing change in the world. So certainly through Human Nature Projects, I'm trying to create this space, this change-making space for passionate people. But certainly what I'd say is that this power of mass individualism, I call it, so seeing the power of the individual, but also of that group, of that collective, is what we need to recognize most in our volunteering activities. Yeah, I think it's been a really positive experience for me as a volunteer and starting up my own organization in this space. But on the whole, environmentalism is very welcoming. It's very impactful what we do. It gives back so much to ourselves as volunteers, and simply being part of communities is amazing.
Thank you, Elliot. It's very interesting, actually, to inspire others to be all one hand in order to change our communities for the better, especially when it comes to environmental issues. We really need to take them seriously. And one of your sayings, I quote, when we look at nature, we see ourselves. This is actually very deep. Is it in regards to the harmony between humans and nature? And what connects you to nature?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm an animal carer here in Australia. I take in injured animals, sick animals, and try and nurse them back to health. But I find that really rewarding, certainly, because you see these amazing recoveries, these amazing stories of wounded creatures that make these recoveries. And you get to meet members of the public themselves who are very concerned about the animals, who bring them in for care, who report them, and are really concerned about their welfare. So I guess what connects me to nature is being surrounded by other animals. I've raised insects, raised lizards, all sorts of critters from a young age. I had a stick insect called ochre, who was one of the most impactful for me, but I've raised fig tree leaf beetles, assassin bugs, central bearded dragons, all of these different animals. And what I call the double effect, simply being surrounded by animals from this early age, is what we see in all of the environmentalists or the naturalists I work with. I think it's really impactful if we can create that atmosphere for different people. That's why environmental education is this burgeoning field. So powerful if we can make it work as we hope it to. Yeah, my experience with nature has been really transformational, really life-changing. Just this January, I was making wildlife films in South Africa, so taking safari drives twice a day, so 6 hours each day, being just surrounded by these natural spaces. It's very calming, very relaxful. It's quite a soulful experience being out in nature, being with animals. Yeah, I think we increasingly are separated from these experiences, but if we can reconnect with nature in that way, if we can see the humanity in other animals, that's the most powerful thing we can hope for.
That's so nice. And I hope we can also watch this film and maybe also share with our viewers. We can publish in the comments in the description of this video. Thank you so much. And from what you said now, I would like to ask you, how do you envision the interaction between all components and creatures and species to establish harmony in this world?
Yes, it's a really difficult question. Obviously, that would be the holy grail of what we're all aiming towards, if we can establish that harmonious relationship between humans and animals. I've recently written a book during lockdown called Human Nature, which explores the human relationship with nature, the past, present, future of how we've interacted with other animals. What I think is most important is if we can just recognize that we are animals, that humans are animals, take that on board as we move forward. So I describe the human species as an opportunistic ecosystem engineer. So we're a species that makes the most of fragmented habitats, of degraded areas, new opportunities along those lines. But we also change these areas, change these habitats to suit ourselves. So we're quite unique, actually, even biologically speaking, but we're certainly not distinct or alone. Charles Darwin famously said that the difference between humans and other animals is one of degree, not of kind. So we might be, say, more intelligent, perhaps, by our measure than other species. We might have complex culture, complex societies, but these things are found in all sorts of animals. And increasingly over the past decade, 2 decades, we've realized this in our research. Yeah, what I aim to do in my work, in all my communication, in my conservation charity, is just to reconnect people with the natural world, make them see the wonder of other animals, this wonder which we're born with. What I see is that as the root of all the change. If we can create that perspective shift, then everything will follow. So we can redesign sustainable development, redesign what we're aiming towards to better incorporate other species, other life forms.
And now you almost gave an answer to the question which we received in Facebook from one of our viewers. His name is Musa Anvari, and he asked, how can we build relationship between human and natural world? I think it was an answer, but maybe you want to add something else.
Sure. No, it's a really good question. And I think there's an increasing number of attempts, increasing number of strategies to be able to achieve that goal. What I do is a mix of education, so raising awareness, but also bringing people out into nature. So I run a local field naturalist group here in Sydney, which is very, very simply bringing a group of community members of the public, out into a natural space once a month, teaching them about the local animals, teaching them about the local fauna, and getting people out in national parks, even in public parks with the animals there, teaching them about it, creates some of that change in a very small way. And what I believe is in creating this grassroots impact globally. So if we can get so many people doing these sort of activities, so many volunteers, and Human Nature Projects has 1,400 volunteers across these 100-some countries. So if we can create that sort of scale to the grassroots change that is the lifeblood of environmentalism, then that will be the ultimate goal. That will be the success we hope to achieve. And that ultimately, if we can sustain it, will create this change in the human relationship with nature that we're seeking to create. So it's all about taking the action on the individual scale. It's the root of optimism. If we can take action, take these different projects in stride and support each other in communities, that will be a strategy certainly I'm using to create this life goal.
Thank you, Elliot. Actually, educational programs are very important for creating awareness and consciousness about environmental issues and nature for humans, because every individual matters when it comes to change. And that brings me to my next question. You had generated a model for mass individualism as a reflection and an application to your theory of change. Can you please give us more details about this and explain to our audience what is mass individualism and how may people explore their own potential through it?
Yeah, really good question again. So mass individualism and the human nature worldview, which I'm trying to promote, is all about trying to empower our volunteers, so empower us on the individual scale to be able to have this really clear vision of the change we want to create, but doing that not only by ourselves as an individual, but through communities. So, for example, in Human Nature Projects in my charity, all of our volunteers act within a national team, so within a collective of volunteers in their country, but also with international working groups. So those sort of two levels. And of course, all of the volunteers have their own say within each collective. They can suggest projects, suggest actions to take, which gives them a really powerful voice, really powerful feedback loops to craft the journey moving forward. But certainly what I've found starting Human Nature Projects and before is that if we have a clear vision, if we know what change we want to make, then that's very much the first step. Human Nature Projects was a huge leap for me to start up. I remember for the first few months, there were many sleepless nights, midnight webinars for Human Nature Projects, for other organizations, working like 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. and through the night. So often if we have this really powerful idea, we'll be willing to see it through to the end. We just need this motivation. And what I love about environmentalism is there's so many dedicated people in the causes working towards these same goals. And I believe it's the same in many social change spaces. As volunteers, we're all super passionate about creating this change, regardless of the organization we're working for, regardless of our goals. So mass individualism, quite simply, is about recognizing the power we every one of us has, but also recognizing the power of connecting up as change makers, as individuals, to create larger change together.
Absolutely, that's so much important for us nowadays to unite. This is why one of the most important questions we ask our guests is, on your opinion, what unites all people on Earth, despite different nationalities, races, despite different religions? What unites all of us?
Well, my only answer to that can be nature itself. I think nature is the universal language of everything. Certainly, what I found in all my activities is there is no group of people who don't have this strong bond with nature. Everyone appreciates it. We're born loving animals, so fascinated by the natural wonders around us. So, if we can continue that trend, continue this love of nature throughout our life, that's the ultimate gift I can give to others through organizations and through my own work. I think I've certainly seen the environmental space is so diverse. There's all sorts of cultures, languages, backgrounds. I mean, an example I like to use is our National Director for Human Nature Projects in Lesotho. He came from the Lesotho Olympic team working in human resources. So he's since started the first and only environmental organization in the country. So in that small country in Southern Africa, they've started their own entire movement, but from this very unorthodox background, no formal training in environmentalism, no clear knowledge of natural history, but just the passion to create the change, to reform society to better care for other animals. And that's what I see time and again across the Human Nature Network and abroad. So I think nature is this universal language, this connection with other animals. And I speak of what I do is reconnecting the family tree of life. So if we can achieve that ultimate goal, then that will be this unifying factor for all of us across the globe.
Great. We have an active discussion in comments or in Facebook as well. I know now in YouTube, we received a question from Ekaterina Albrecht. Musa Anvari has brought up a very important question, and I like to add to it, what measures should we take to protect everyone, not just nature?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I've recently been doing some research about environmental elements of sustainable development. So how these two factors interlink. And what I found certainly is that everything benefits every other part of development. So if we can improve our ecosystems, then that will greatly benefit local communities. If we benefit local communities, then that will greatly benefit the ecosystems around. So everything is very much connected. We've seen with COVID, with the current situation, that as we're in lockdown, as we're isolating ourselves across the globe, the nature is indeed recovering. We've taken off some of the human impacts, but simply by improving our standard of living, it has very much the same effect. If we can improve how we operate as a society, improve our human cohesion, then that will greatly benefit ecosystems and environments themselves. I think there's typically this one or the other debate. We can either protect nature, but that would be at the cost of humans, whereas it's very much the opposite. If we can protect either one, then it will greatly benefit the other. If we can protect nature, protect ecosystems, then that represents 40% of the global GDP. This is 80% of the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's very, very deeply interlinked with the whole debate, and there's no separating the two. If we can succeed in one area, then chances are we'll succeed in the other. It's just about trying to link the two discussions as strongly as we can to move forward as a cohesive whole, to move forward stronger as a global community.
That's actually very interesting. And there are the 4 C's that I find really interesting as well. And I would like to ask you a question about them. So we have connection, curiosity, creativity, and collaboration. What does the harmony between all these elements create, and how can individual contribute into ensuring each and every one of these key elements?
Yeah, so conservation's four C's, this philosophy of mine, was actually the first piece of the puzzle I developed. I was in France over midwinter in January last year, so in January of 2019. And I was volunteering at a raptor, so bird of prey and hedgehog rehabilitation center in southern France. And what I saw there was that if we look at the different environmental organizations, some of the major groups that are operating in these space, they're so driven by protecting the animals themselves, looking for the deliverables. Funding is very short of resources in conservation. It's very, very resource poor. There's low interests as opposed to perhaps some of the humanitarian causes, which are very easy to relate to. So the conservation of four C's is about redefining how we measure our impact. Human nature projects is connecting people for the planet. So we're measuring the impact we create through the perspective shift, through the educational programs, the awareness raising, through the volume of volunteers we've got involved, the number of people we touch through our projects. So the four C's are about reimagining conservation as a discussion for people, creating people as the primary topic. So empowering people to create the change as opposed to creating the change and having people adapt to it themselves. The connection ties into reconnecting with nature. So getting people out in nature for these programs. I spoke of the Durrell effect earlier. The collaboration then is connecting up environmental NGOs. So connecting up all the different stakeholders, and typically we're in this echo chamber ourselves within the environmental space. So if we can try and break down some of those divides, talk to society as a larger whole, spread these messages beyond perhaps preaching to the converted as we tend to do, then that will be really, really powerful, really impactful. The curiosity is looking at engaging people at a young age. So this wonder of nature I spoke of earlier, and I've recently started a podcast of mine and a mini documentary series, which is all about expressing nature and natural history in a really accessible way. So trying to take off some of the perhaps less accessible, some of the intimidating elements of natural history typically. So certainly what I found trying to get into the space is it can be fairly elitist. It's sometimes hard to follow discussions. There's so much terminology, so much to learn. It's a huge subject, but trying to distill it so the everyday person can really appreciate it is what the curiosity is. Together the four C's are really about trying to give people more of a say in conservation, trying to get people and planet to talk more together, those two realms of pursuit, bringing them together in this one debate.
Thank you so much. And we really have a very interesting discussion in comments and many questions addressed to you. And thank you very much, Musa Anwari, for your questions. And just before I would like to read you these questions, I have one question. So now you touch the topic of informing people and bringing up more positive examples of how people can treat nature, how we can be attentive, educational programs, how much we are connected, like in your project, particularly with nature, and that's very much important. This is why I would like to ask you a question. we say that creative society is a society where everyone is happy and there we all live in peace, in harmony with themselves, ourselves, with nature as well. And in such a society, what is the role of mass media? Which kind of information, which kind of examples should be shown in mass media, which could help such a society to develop?
Oh, that's a very challenging question. I've recently done a survey of 1,000 environmentalists looking at what they thought of the current situation. So, which is very much impacted by the mass media, by these traditional outlets. But what I've found is there's so much pessimism in the space, very, very negative opinions of current events, and some of it's true, but a lot of it's exaggerated because conservation itself is rapidly evolving. There's so much progress being made. We just don't often give time to it. We don't often realize it. So I think mass media should definitely be embraced in conservation, but we need to take all of these discussions, all of the media presence through this optimistic frame. I mean, everything I've spoken about thus far is bringing a human element into conservation. So if we can look at perhaps the people behind these breakthroughs, these stories, look at the conservationists themselves, humanize the story, that would definitely help people to resonate with some of the developments made. Some of the stories that we hear are really, really degrading of our, I guess, our hope, our inspiration moving forward, like the Australian bushfires in January of this year. And I'm calling in from Sydney right now, so it's a subject that's very, very close to home. But some of the media coverage around that was quite disheartening, and there was a huge impact on the native wildlife. I think it was estimated 1 billion animals killed in New South Wales over the first few months of those bushfires alone. So we can't hope to estimate how many animals were impacted, how many had their lives lost. But it's clear that the land will recover within a few years. There will be a recovery. The Australian bush is designed to burn, if perhaps not that fiercely. So if we can recognize like some of these smaller successes, for example, rhino poaching was the question in my survey. How has rhino poaching changed over the past 5 years in South Africa? And it's halved. The number of rhinos kills has dropped by half, which is an amazing piece of news, but it never gets covered because it's so much easier to pitch a story about rhinos being slaughtered than rhinos not being slaughtered. Likewise, there was a question about the Amazon bushfires. So some of the fires in the Amazon in Brazil, and they were asked to estimate what percentage of the rainforest had been lost in those events. I think the majority answer was 50 or 80%, so a huge, huge fraction of the rainforest, whereas it's closer to 20% that was damaged in those events, tragic as they were. So we can recognize that nature needs our urgent intervention, that we need to help restore natural places, whilst also recognizing that we're already making tremendous gains towards those goals. So I'm a conservation optimist, trying to see the bright side of the story. So I think that's the role I'd love mass media to play in this discussion, the role that we can all play in sharing the stories that we hear, sharing our own stories in the space as we're doing today.
So it should be true. It should be at the same time positive and constructive, like to discuss really the ways out and not just pass negative emotions and to multiply them. But really, if we raise a question, we raise it for finding a solution altogether, like to announce it loud out so that all people unite to find the solution, right?
Very true. Actually, I believe that the functioning of the world, if it's harmonious today, is due to the connectivity between all the species that construct it. And what do you think of the role that plays the ecosystem connectivity in economic development, and how can we ensure it, even like taking in consideration diversity of all species that exist, diversity of all creatures, and what's happening currently in the world?
Ooh. I think what we need to do is reframe some of our discussions. So look at the tremendous diversity of people and life forms out there acting in these spaces. One of the other questions in my survey was around how many species do you think there are? So how many plant and animal species? How many other smaller life forms? And science has no idea. Estimates can be up to 1 trillion different life forms, different species that there are out there. Of those, we've discovered just over a billion. Just over a million. There's a tremendous amount of natural wonder out there, and if we can recognize that, then that will help get a larger number of people, a larger diversity involved within the spaces I mentioned. There's so many stakeholders, so many actors, so many volunteers. It's a space which everyone can resonate with. It's got so many powerful communities, so many volunteer collectives. Yeah, it's an amazing space to work in, environmentalism itself, working with natural history, communicating about nature. There's so much to discuss, so much to share, to communicate, and that's what I love about doing what I do.
Yeah, that's true. We've got so much work to do on this planet. Doesn't matter which sphere of our life we take, we should really unite and start to see ourselves as one. And in this vision, we can really do something very good. And this is why the project Creative Society is a global international project. There, all people can join this project. And within the frame of this project, we talk to people about a world. Their creative society is such a society where people live happily, prosperously, they feel secured, they don't need to really destroy nature in order to survive, because they have nice life. So we believe that with contemporary technologies and everything which exists nowadays, we can really guarantee the good level of life to everyone without continuing to destroy our planet. So let's start from the main question we ask our guests. How do you envision such a society where everyone is happy? Can you describe it, please?
Wow, so much to talk about. The first change I'd make is simply uh, redesigning how we measure our own development, our own success as a collective. What I've written about in my book and looked into in my research is trying to reevaluate sustainability. So reevaluate development, not to be about how we succeed as humans, but how we succeed as like a larger ecosystems, habitats, and the world itself. What we're increasingly seeing, and the COVID situation is a great example, is that human success is very closely interlinked with the health of nature. So COVID is a zoonotic disease, which means it came from other animals, and that's the result of the illegal wildlife trade, unfortunately. These animals coming into China, these animals in horrendous conditions that are forced to suffer. But if we could remedy that, if we can look on the flip side, and hopefully in the future, certainly with COVID, we've seen already great improvements made on those notes. If we can try and look at sustainable development as us not exploiting nature, as us living alongside nature, then that's the first step, certainly. What I'd say is that as we move into cities, as we're increasingly urbanized as a species, as humanity, then it's increasingly hard to connect back with nature. But if we can make that extra effort, if we can connect online or find green spaces in our cities and increasingly work those into urban planning, urban development, that will help. But if we can keep this bond with nature as strong as it has been historically, as strong as we hope it can be for 50, 100 years' time, then once the human population stabilizes, so once it stabilizes at 10 billion, 11 billion, as it will by the end of the century, then we'll have this model in place to be able to create a really harmonious existence alongside nature, a really peaceful world, which is not only for humans, but for animals too. So, yeah, as I mentioned, I'm sort of doing the groundwork as I see it, trying to build this strong relationship between humans and animals, this really powerful connection. So, if we can move forward towards this creative society, move forward to this future ideal world, then the first step is to be able to recognize the humanity in other animals, discard notions of human superiority, discard notions of us being having more right to be on this world than perhaps other animals do. Then that's the change I'd like to see within my lifetime. And the eventual impacts of that, perhaps we're yet to see, because in 50 years, in 100 years' time, we'll have technologies we can't dream of nowadays. So I think we'll be closer to nature in some ways than we have ever been. We're understanding more of how nature works than we have in the past, many, many times more, orders of magnitude. So if we can integrate our human systems with nature, the field of biomimicry is a great example. So taking nature's innovations, nature's inventions, and adapting them for our human purposes. So there's many, many examples of how we've learned from animals, how we've learned from nature to improve our own way of life, our own societies. But if we can continue that trend moving forward, then that's the future I'd certainly like to see.
That's very interesting. I can see that you're speaking about very interesting, deep concepts about discoveries, history, technology, and innovation. How all these concepts collide with each other to go to help us build a creative society. And especially that I've seen from your show, Cabinet of Curiosities, that you would like to explore the wonders of Earth. So can you please tell us about all of these interesting concepts?
Yes. So, I mean, through the work I do, through the environmental communication, teaching people about natural wonders, everything I'm trying to say to communicate is about learning from animals themselves, learning about these natural wonders, learning about everything we can admire in other animals. I like to think I'm trying to teach us how to be a better animal as opposed to a better person, a better human. So trying to look at reframing debates, reframing how we look at ourselves through these less anthropogenic lenses, not being so biased, so blinkered in how we measure sustainable development or how we measure ourselves as people, as decent human beings. In the Cabinet of Curiosities, all I was doing was taking items from my collections. I collect all sorts of things: stamps, coins, elements of the periodic table, rocks, minerals, feathers, insects, shells, all these natural wonders we encounter every day, but looking at them in a whole new light. There's so much we pass by every day that we don't really appreciate, that we perhaps don't understand, so we don't see, we don't look at properly. What I'd like to change in society and our perspective is simply appreciating the nature around us all. I mean, Sydney is a beautiful city, a great example because it's full of green spaces. But it's the case in every city around the world that there is nature to look at, that there's animals surrounding us, be they big or small. I started a lot of my journey with photography, with communication in my garden, photographing insects. So photographing these mini beasts. But whatever it is, whatever animal we connect with, whatever journey path we take, it will be with an animal. There's always animals around us. So if we can learn more about, appreciate, wonder at nature, then that will be amazing. It's part of the 4Cs, it's part of the human nature worldview. If we can create this perspective shift, educate people, raise awareness, then I think everything will change. Our place as human beings on this planet will change quite profoundly.
Yeah, very true, and exactly. Humans should feel grateful for the nature and the beauty that we have and that we're seeing every single day, and the vibe that we're getting from. And I would like to take you to the 8 foundations of creative society, so we can explore them together, and you may choose 2 of the most interesting foundations for you. So you may see them on screen. We have human life, human freedom, human safety, transparency and openness of information for all, the creative ideology, development of personality, justice and equality, self-governance, society. Which 2 foundations that you find the most interesting according to you? What are the foundations that interest you the most?
Ooh, so many to choose from. I think they're all very important. I've recently been looking into the Earth Charter, which is about doing a very similar goal to this, reframing how we look at ourselves, how we look at development moving forward. So I think there's human aspects, environmental aspects to it all. I think number 5 is particularly interesting, this creative ideology. So looking at innovation, at technology, at how we reframe our human place on this planet through the use of technology tools, through the use of these new innovations. I mentioned biomimicry earlier in passing, but simply looking at what we can learn from animals themselves, from nature, natural systems, and the tremendous gains it has allowed us to make as humanity, as Homo sapiens, learning from creatures great and small, insects, larger creatures like otters or whales. All these innovations, all these new technologies have this small impact on the planet, but accumulating to create this larger, profound impact on how we operate as humans. So my creative ideology certainly is trying to reframe humanity, reframe our human relationship with nature, and do that through these new tools, these new perspectives that are increasingly emerging in the current climate. So I think there's so much to learn, so much diversity, so much fascinating projects, so much fascinating work being done, that if we can embrace that as part of our creative ideology, as part of our worldview, then there will be an almost unlimited potential for ourselves moving forwards.
Exactly. It's very interesting actually to use new technologies in order for us to operate and find new approaches to operate in order to reframe the relationship between humans and nature. That's very interesting. Thank you so much, Elliot.
Yeah, and actually, if I could just also introduce the 5th foundation to our viewers, could we see it again on the screen, please? So I would read it because it's very much corresponds to what Elias just said from his personal understanding. So ideology should be aimed at popularization the best human qualities and stopping everything that is directed against a human. The main priority is the priority of humanity, high spiritual and moral aspirations of humanness, virtue, mutual respect, and strengthening of friendship, creating conditions for the development and education of a human with a capital H, cultivating moral values in each person and society, prohibition of propaganda of violence, condemnation and denunciation of any form of division, aggression, and anti human manifestations. And basically, also then I was thinking about the fifth foundation of a creative society. um, I asked myself, um, it seems to every person then you read the description of the fifth foundation that it's natural. We all know that it should be like that. But at the same time, what we see nowadays in our society is that these values are being, they're not like popular, and people didn't talk about them too much. But now in different platforms, people start to talk more and more about it. And like Elliot, you speak from the perspective of nature on your platform about the same things. Yes, how important it is to be human, how important it is to be like a human with a capital H letter. And so that means that we as humanity, we really need now to recover this creative ideology and to bring it to different platforms to make it popular again. And then we can start to change out the world, to bring it to the place where everyone is happy and it's harmonious. But we really need it now. So thank you for choosing this ideology to be discussed. Really very interesting one. Sarah, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that. Actually, I'm saying that it's very interesting, and we are receiving really positive comments from our viewers. They're really interested in what you're saying, Elliot, in your perspective of how you envision the relationship between humans and nature, and how it is time for us to take actions and find effective solution to really reframe it again. Thank you so much.
And I would like to ask to read one more question from our viewers. It's Musa Anvari. Thank you, Musa, for being so active today. So the question is, how do you see interaction and relationship between humans and animals in the future? No, sorry, it was a question from Ekaterina, and from Musa, there is another question. So there are two questions to be answered, please. So what measures should humans take in order to protect the nature from catastrophic situation? This is a question from Musa. And the question from Ekaterina, how do you see interaction and relationship between humans and animals in the future in a creative society? So these are two questions.
Yeah. So it's bits and pieces of what I mentioned before. But I think as humanity, we need to recognize the rights of nature, the value of other living species, of other living beings. If we can really appreciate nature on a fundamental level, appreciate the beauty, the wonder of natural spaces, build that more strongly into our culture as a powerful force for good, building it into all sorts of social movements. And the environmental movement itself has done amazingly. It's only really been in existence for the past 50 some years. So it's such a new developing notion, so rapidly evolving. But if we can try and reframe as humans how we see ourselves and how we see other animals, then if we can see the human aspect of other animals, the humanness in nature itself, then that's what I believe is most important moving forward. I think that will allow us to reframe sustainable development, reframe how we measure progress itself, And ultimately, it's about how we view our progress as a society, as a species, as nations and communities. So if we can reframe how we look at nature, reframe how we view ourselves in comparison to other animals, then that will allow us to better embrace these principles of the human nature worldview, of environmentalism itself. So I think that's the really important takeaway, the really important change to make. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for this amazing conversation today. And it is so interesting, so many understandings. I would like to ask you our main question, Elliot. Would you like to live in a creative society?
Certainly. I think our world is evolving, changing more rapidly than ever. But this vision of the creative society sort of transcends it all. It's very powerful. This vision for the change we want to make, this future world we'd all like to live in. If we can incorporate this into the post-COVID world, into this remodeling we're seeing already going on, this re-evaluation of humanity's development, humanity's progress, the systems we use, the cultures we all live in, then I think a creative society is almost inevitable. That's where all this is leading. That's where the momentum is. And it's certainly a world I'd like to live in.
Thank you. And how do you envision us to inform about this project, the whole humanity, as quickly as possible? What would you recommend?
Well, I think what I'd say is simply using this model of mass individualism, working to create a sort of grassroots model, but then scaling that globally. That's the model Human Nature Projects has used, and we've scaled in sort of the space of 12 months to be across 104 countries with some 1,400 volunteers. So it's really powerful what globalization has done in bringing us closer together, breaking down these traditional geographical barriers and barriers of culture and language. I think visions like this for the creative society, for a future world that better embraces the great aspects of humanity, these visions are increasingly becoming easier to realize. There's a new potential to bring everyone together with an ideology like the creative society. So I think what I'd say is there's an amazing power of community, of collectives in spaces like this. And with such a powerful vision as the creative society has, then that will be practically unstoppable.
Thank you so much. And you, Sarah, would you like to live in a creative society?
I would love to live in creative society, and actually what Elliot was speaking about responsibility and mass individualism, that's very important. We need to understand that we are important in our society and our contribution matters. So this is at an individual level, a granular level that develops itself and help us take more effective and performant actions. Thank you so much for today's conversation. It was amazing.
And I would like just to inform our viewers that it's very easy to join the Project Creative Society. You simply go to the webpage allatraunites.com. You see a red Join Us button. You click it. You choose a language you speak, and you choose an answer how you would like to participate, and then join. Please leave your contacts in the form so that volunteers of ALLATRA International Public Movement could get in touch with you, and let's unite, and together we can build a creative society very quickly. So thank you so much, Elliot, for today's conversation, and maybe you would like to wish something to the viewers of ALLATRA TV Middle East channel.
No, thank you both for organising and for hosting this event. It's been a fascinating discussion, I think, all around exploring this human nature relationship and the vision for the creative society moving forward as a species moving forward as communities across the globe. So I think all I'd say by way of closure is that we need to look towards communities like ALLATRA, like Human Nature Projects, like all the many social change organizations across the globe in these times of COVID, whilst we're most vulnerable, most isolated. And if we can create these really powerful collectives and maintain them, then there's nothing to stop the vision for the change we want to create. There's really no limits, no bounds to this vision of ours.
Thank you.
That's very interesting, actually, and I find our today's live conversation was so informative. Please, our dear viewers, share our live conversation using two hashtags, hashtag Creative Society and hashtag Electra Unite. And please leave us your ideas. The more we get to explore more ideas, the more we can see the potential that there is in us uniting and coming together for building a creative society for all humans, for nature, and for us all the creators on planet Earth. Thank you so much and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Sarah, and see you soon.